Good morning, everybody. It is I, Dr. CashMoney, back again with another educational Raid Shadow Legends video. If you haven't already, please like this video and then subscribe to my channel and help me out and make things even more cash money for me. And with that, we'll get right into the video. Today we're going to be talking about picking starter champions. It's the first thing that you do in Raid Shadow Legends, and it's highly important as to how it develops your progress within the game. There are 4 starter champions. We have Athel, Kale, Elhain, and Gallic. And they're all from different factions. They all have fairly unique abilities. So we're going to dive in and look at them, starting with Athel. Of the starter champions, I picked Athel as my starter on this account, and I had a relatively good time with her, farming all the way through Brutal with very little stoppage. Athel's A1 is a 3-hit attack that can place a 25% weaken debuff on a single enemy. That makes the enemies take more damage. It is very difficult to find weaken this strong, this consistent on a rare, uh, which is what makes Athel a very strong pick for me. Is one of the reasons why I picked her. She had the fact there's a 3-hit on her first attack. It just seemed good from the novice perspective, and the weaken ability sounded unique to me at the time. I would find out later that it is very difficult to find good weaken early on, which is a significant factor for fighting bosses, since it makes the boss take more damage from everybody that hits them. Her A2 is an area effect attack. It attacks all enemies, and it has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. Almost all the starter champions have AoE or AoEs of some kind. Athel's is not particularly special. It is very bland as far as they go. Her A3, Higher Blessing, puts a 25% increased attack buff on her for 2 turns. And if her HP is less than 50%, it will put a 30% increased def buff on her for 2 turns. And then she takes an extra turn after this. This skill can really save you in a lot of battles early on. The increased attack is pretty dangerous all by itself, and the increased defense, if she's less than 50%, makes her quite tanky. 25% more attack, just do quick math right here. 25% of 1,000 is 250, and then we'll just say 25% of 200 is another 50. So we have 300 more attack, basically 290-ish or whatever, putting at her the highest attack of all the starter champions right out of the bat when she activates Higher Blessing. Not only that, you can use Higher Blessing to make Divine Blades cool down quicker. You can start with her A1 or start with her A2, go into Higher Blessing, and then it'll make it cool down, because this is a 3 turn after you use it. Then you go and use this. It's like, oh, 2 turns just to use it. Take an extra turn, 1 turn, makes it cycle around very fast. It's a very unique tactic. The aura ability, all starter champions have this aura ability where they increase all your allies' HP by 15%. Every last one of them has it. Next starter that I will talk about is Elhain. Elhain, in my opinion, is the best campaign clearer and farming specialist of all the starter champions. Her A1 is nothing particularly special. It's attacks one enemy, and then if you do a critical hit, you get an extra hit. Not a whole lot going on there. However, her A2, Lightning Arrow, attacks one enemy, then all enemies. So this could hit one enemy and then go ahead and hit the rest. Has an extra 15% chance for inflicting a critical hit. This sentence appears in every starter champion's kit somewhere. Then it places a 30% increased critical rate buff on this champion for 3 turns if a target is killed. If you can weaken down an enemy and then do this, it'll make cleanup far easier for her on tougher swarms. You can lead Keen Shot into Lightning Arrow and then finally into Valley of Death, and it should wipe a lot of things out almost just in those 3 turns by those 3 sequences. Valley of Death attacks all enemy 2 times. That is a very strong A3. As you can see, Elaine is pretty much geared to just attacking groups of enemies. That's what she's good at. She's not really good at fighting bosses. So that is a consideration. Her aura is the same as Athel's. Next we'll talk about Kale. He is widely regarded as one of the best, if not the best, starter champions. There's some places that disagree a little bit with it. I myself disagree with him being the best. I mean, he's got these knives on his back he doesn't even use. How can he be the best if you're not doing that? Lol. But the reason why he is so good is Kale is a poison master. You look at his A1, he has a 80% chance of putting a 2.5% poison debuff for 2 turns on his target, and that goes all the way up to 100% when trained all the way. Poison is especially dangerous against bosses. It does a lot of damage to them since they have huge hit point pools. His A2 is the extra 15% chance critical rate AoE. But what's unique about it is for every enemy it kills, he gets a 25% turn meter increase. That could be really good. It can help him take an extra turn. However, the areas where it apply are mainly against fighting waves, against bosses, or spiders, spiderlings. Not so great in arena, for example, since basically if it kills everybody in arena, you win anyway. So what do you care about taking an extra turn? Can help a whole lot in campaign and some farming though. This is why most people regard Kale as being really good, this ability. And then finally, his A3, which attacks 4 times at random and has a 40% chance of placing 5% poison debuffs for 2 turns. So he could put up to 4 poisons on something, which is really good versus bosses once again. And this ability gets all the way up to 50% when fully trained. This is usually why people want to consider picking Kale as their starter. It gives them a strong advantage against fighting bosses, and fighting bosses is a good bit of this game, to be fair. All the dungeons have bosses. You get into clans to fight a boss. Some faction war stages have bosses in them. There are a lot of boss enemies. So having an early advantage versus bosses is never bad. The last champion I'm going to review is Gallic. Gallic is the poster boy for Raid and is widely regarded as the worst starter champion. Overall, his stats aren't bad. However, with a subpar A1, and mainly the only thing interesting here is that he can increase his own speed on his AoE, and then finally leading into another random 4-hit attack that requires a lot of setup to be mostly effective. Since it attacks 4 times at random, it could hit whoever. It could hit the same character 4 times. If there's 4 characters out, it could hit all of them once or any mix in between. But it does have a 30% chance of placing a 30% decreased debuff for 2 turns, which is not bad. It's not excellent. And it also has a 30% chance of placing a 60% decreased def debuff for 2 turns if the target has more than 2 debuffs. That's pretty hard to set up early on. Of all the debuffs that you could put out there, on everything, you're going to be looking for other champions that would have AoE debuffs, like attack down would probably be one of the easiest ones out of the group to get, and even then that's not that easy for a starter. AoE weakened is in the realm of like legendaries. There's some AoE poisons, but they're pretty far apart as well. Getting a lot of AoE debuffs on something early on is not an easy task. That's why probably Gallic is not one of the best starters. He is good for Arena though, since he does increase his own speed, and speed is king in Arena. Alright everybody, that's been my review of the 4 starter champions. If you're looking for the cash money response on it, you could go any way. To me, Athel's the most balanced of all the champions in my opinion. She's good versus bosses and good versus waves. She's not explicitly as good as Kale is early on versus bosses, or Elaine early on versus waves. Elaine definitely can clear enemies faster. Kale's poison is definitely going to put him ahead versus bosses. Athel's the more balanced route. And sadly, Gallic, the only area that he could conceivably shine in my opinion, is Arena. But he requires team building as a consideration around him to do well there. He's probably the neediest of the 4 champions. I would honestly recommend Elaine to most starters that don't know what they're doing in this game, or Athel, because poison has become more abundant lately, and Kale is not as all-powerful as a starter as he once was, in my opinion. However, Elaine, Kale, or Athel are all decent starters. It's just you kind of have to decide what your play style will be more lenient to. If you want to do well versus just explicitly bosses, pick Kale. He's not a bad farmer at all, and he does have AoE abilities. If you want to murder the campaign, pick Elaine. She will smear the campaign. She is a very good farmer and clearer. If you want a champion that is balanced everywhere, pick Athel. She does well everywhere, and even better than some of the other 2 in some ways. It's highly situational. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in for this cash money video. Please stay tuned for more, and I'll see you in the next one.